Welcome to the Old Library in the heart of Trinity College, Dublin. It is also the home of the Book of Kells, one of the world's greatest medieval manuscripts. My name is Anne-Marie Diffley, and I've been hosting tours here in the library for over 30 years. I'm going to welcome you on a journey through the library, through the Book of Kells, and I'm going to answer the top 10 questions that visitors regularly ask. The Book of Kells is a beautifully decorated manuscript of the four Gospels of the life of Jesus Christ. It's over 1,200 years old, and it's remarkable that it has survived all this time. It's beautifully decorated. In fact, the artwork is what makes the Book of Kells unique. No other manuscript from this period is so beautifully illustrated and decorated. In fact, it's often referred to as the work of angels. The beauty of its lettering, the portraits, and the Celtic knot motifs have inspired people down through the centuries. If you look at the Book of Kells, you'll see the detail is so intricate that some of the detail, in fact, is nearly invisible to the naked eye. Theories about the creation of the Book of Kells differ. The most likely idea is that the Book of Kells was written by monks on the Scottish island of Iona. The island of Iona suffered many brutal Viking attacks in the early 9th century, and it is thought that during one such attack, the monks set out on their boats to their sister monastery in Ireland, bringing the Book of Kells with them. The sister monastery was located in Kells, County Meath, and it was thought that the artwork was completed there. The Book of Kells remained at Kells till the 17th century, when it was brought to Trinity College for safekeeping, and has remained here ever since. The book was created by young monks around the age of 18 or possibly even younger, but in those days 18 would have been considered middle-aged. The mind boggles on the work that these young monks did. I mean, they needed a lot of stamina and really good eyesight. In fact, we know that in some manuscripts, the monks have written little notes to each other saying things like, I'm very cold, I'm tired of this, when will it be finished? Latin was not the first language of these teenage boys, and probably accounts why there are mistakes in the Book of Kells, and indeed, one page has been copied twice. There are red crucifixes around this page, which really is the medieval term for please delete this page. The Book of Kells was written on calf skin, known as vellum, and you can see an example here. It's estimated it took the skins of 185 calves to make the pages in the Book of Kells. To prepare the vellum, the skin was soaked in lime. Then hair and other debris was scraped away using a knife. In medieval times, vellum was a valuable resource. The monks used what was available, whether it was perfect or not, and some stitching is still visible showing where the Book of Kells was repaired or patched. What is really captivating about the Book of Kells is that the illustrations are full of symbolism. For example, snakes weave their way through most of the pages of the Book of Kells, including the one here behind me. Snakes were thought to represent the resurrection because snakes shed their skin and are reborn. Peacocks feature in all the major pages in the Book of Kells and are thought to represent Christ's immortality due to the ancient belief that peacock flesh did not disintegrate. Lions also play a major part in the symbolism in the Book of Kells. According to ancient Christian texts, lion cubs were born dead. 3 days later, their father arrived, breathed over them, and brought them to life. It's the symbol of the resurrection. So as you have gathered, the Book of Kells is a highly visual manuscript. It wasn't for daily use. It really is altar furniture. It was used on ceremonial occasions, holy days and high days. It must have been an awe-inspiring sight 1200 years ago when most people had very little exposure to visual material. Welcome to the long room. When visitors step into this room, it takes their breath away, and I think you can see why. In this library chamber, we have 200,000 of Trinity's oldest books. The first thing you will notice is that the books are arranged by size. So big books at the bottom, and the further on you go up, the smaller they get. I guess if you're coming down the ladder, you want to come down with the small book. Many of the books in the long room have been donated to Trinity in full collections. So the name of the donor or the collection can be found overhead. The answer is yes, it is a working library. Trinity students and researchers have access to these books, also members of other institutions, and so can any member of the community who say they need to see Trinity's copy. Books from the long room are viewed in supervised reading rooms at either end of the library. This is arranged on request by our librarians, which means they are kept busy. So on your visit, you're likely to see them accessing the books in our galleries. We have some books that have never been looked at, but we also have some books that are requested time after time. For instance, Shakespeare's First Folio or a first edition of the Book of Mormon. The application of the cotton cords began in the 1970s, and these are put on by our conservation team for two reasons. Firstly, it's used to identify books that are particularly delicate or vulnerable and need conservation treatment. And secondly, it's to keep the book together so that the cover doesn't become detached. The Brian Boru harp is very special. It is the oldest surviving harp in Ireland. It's made of willow and oak, and it dates from the 15th century. If you get in close, you can see how beautifully carved the wood is. You will notice along the harp some semi-precious stones. The bards who played these instruments were the oral historians of the period, keeping alive the songs, the stories, the traditions of the various families. The bards were a very important part of Irish society, so much so that the harp became used as a symbol of Ireland in literature. And in the early 1920s, the new Irish government adopted the harp as the national emblem of Ireland. You see it on our government publications, you see it on our coins, and of course on our favourite beverage, Guinness. We are now near the end of the visit, and no visit would be complete without reflecting on the world-famous people who have connection with this library. I'm often asked what famous Irish writers used the long room. It's worth mentioning that this library was the only library in Trinity for over 200 years, which means a lot of our past famous students would have walked through this space. That includes Jonathan Swift, author of Gulliver's Travels. In fact, we have a bus dedicated to Jonathan Swift in this room. Bram Stoker, who brought Dracula to the world, would have used this space. And also Samuel Beckett, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, would have referenced the books here on the shelves. Perhaps our most famous Irish writer is Oscar Wilde, and it is really wonderful to think he also used this space. So that brings us to the end of our visit to the Book of Kells and Old Library. I hope you enjoyed the tour of the top 10 visitor questions that are frequently asked. If you want to learn more, book a visit, or have a Q&A, please go to our website at bookofkells.ie. Thank you.